Mr. Satnaliwala, let me just ask you first of all, if you can give us a sense of the portfolio that Oriental Structures does have, both in terms of BOT and EPC, and then after that you can tell us what your experience was with the InvIT. When did it start? How long did it take? Did you get what you want?
So good afternoon, everybody. So Oriental Structure Engineers was primarily an EPC contractor, right? I think we actually diversified into BOT projects in the year 2009. And I think so most of the speakers were talking about the bidding process, how to do. So Oriental Structures has been very, from a risk framework perspective, very conservative in terms of bidding, right? That's why we have very limited projects in our portfolio. Around 16 odd projects are there, right? Out of which 5 projects have gone to the InvIT. Balance are still under construction or in the revenue generating phase part of it, right? So that's the, basic guideline of Oriental Structure, because every organization needs to have their own risk framework. Within that risk framework, you need to operate basically. Somebody may be aggressive, may have more projects. Somebody are less aggressive. They want to go in a step-by-step, look at the projects which are strategic in nature and then according to bid for, right? So it's overall a 4,000 crore group, basically. And we are the 5th InvIT in the country. So most of the gentlemen must be aware of it, that in 2016, there was a regulation change in the income tax, right, where it allowed the DDT exemption for the InvITs, right? And that's how the first InvIT IRB was born. And in last 2 years, we are around 5 InvITs, and the amount of money that has been pumped in is around $3 to $4 billion. So the potential of InvIT, people can understand from this part of it, that there's a huge potential in terms of InvIT. Global investors understand the product very well. Long-term investors who want a sustainable return, right? They like this product, right? With the tax piece, right? It becomes more lucrative, because if you look at countries like Singapore, Malaysia, they still don't have that kind of tax flexibility which India has today, basically, right? So if you are looking for a double-digit return growth, right? Global investors are very attracted to a project like InvIT. And if you have an asset which can generate return, don't need anything beyond that. The other point is very important about InvIT is, right, it's a mix of it's a hybrid instrument, as all of you know. It has both the components, right, debt and equity piece of it, right? So I have not seen any other structure till now which gives you a guaranteed that 90% of your cash flow has to be distributed, right? So that gives an excitement to the global investors also, that if your asset is generating cash, 90% has to come, that is as per the guidelines. So nobody can take a call. In other Companies Act or other part, it is upon you to declare dividend or not. But in this case, if you have a cash, you have to upstream at least 90%. You can do more than that, but at least 90% is what SEBI guidelines state, that part of it.
Okay. Let me go back to your particular InvIT. Did you put all assets in the InvIT, or all?
So we put only 5 assets out of the 16.
Out of the 5 out of the 16 BOT.
So I think it's important you need
to
analyze
what is the value of the 16 BOTs, and which are the 5 that you put, and why did you pick those 5?
Yeah, so it's important when you are picking up an asset, it has to be cash generating also, right? So basically, investors will come for a return basis, right? So they are long term, but they also need to see in short term how much they are getting, right? And over a period of time, how much that asset is going to yield, right? So we handpicked those assets, right? 5 of them, and we put it in InvIT. The total valuation came around something around more than $1 billion, basically, right? But we knew that these are the assets which will actually be exciting for the investors also. So it's important that you look at the asset quality that you're going to put in the InvIT, right? It is very important from that perspective before you attract the investors on InvIT.
And who were the key investors who came in?
So we had multilateral, bilateral. I can't name because we are governed by regulations, so we can't name them, but I think so. One of them is World Bank for sure, but rest all are multilateral, bilateral.
You can name the number of them. You can. How many of them
5.
are there? There are 5
actually,
investors.
So just to
the 5 investors,
yeah,
not projects. Okay.
So just to elaborate, I think so. Most of you are aware or not, there are 2 types of InvITs, right? One is public, another is private. So just like a IPO is there, both have to go through an IPO process. But in a private InvIT, you need only 5 investors. That's a mandate, right? And in a public InvIT, it has to be 100. So we have to have 5 investors because we are a private InvIT.
Okay. And could you tell us the 5 projects that are part of that?
So one is Nagpur Betul. There are 2 in Nagpur, one in Kanpur, and one is Bangalore. Other one is in Indore.
Okay. And what is the total kilometer length of these projects?
Something around, it should be around 1,000 kilometers.
Around 1,000 kilometers, okay. And what is the total investment in these projects?
So we got around $350 million
Okay, right.
from the investors.
Okay, but what had been your investment in these projects before?
So total investment is around $1 billion. So our investment is around 60%
No,
of that.
sorry. These are were these mostly completed projects or
All completed,
and all operational?
all operations.
So what had been the cost of these projects? I should have said instead of investment.
It was something around $800 million.
Okay, so that means a fair bit of fair return that
Correct.
that you got, and what are you going to do with other 11 assets? I mean, are you likely to come back with those, or you think?
Yeah, so I think so we have agreed with the investor that the two ROFOs as a part of that, which will go as a part of the InvIT. But I think so we just started in June the InvIT, and we want to stabilize first before we start putting in more assets. So we are on lookout for additional assets also, apart from the two ROFOs that we have.
Okay. Now, what were the difficulties that you had in doing this, and what are the difficulties other InvITs have in doing this? I know that there is a lot of talk of clarifications needed by SEBI. This kind of debt and equity hybrid, and I know that the meeting that you attended was only the second meeting we had. Was actually the second meeting. We had one a year and a half ago,
Right.
and there were one or two clarifications offered by SEBI, but not others. So could you tell us the difficulties in terms of what are the clarifications needed by SEBI or by other regulators? That's one. And two is, as a result of those non-clarifications, who is not able to participate in InvITs?
No, I think so. If you look at the structure of the InvIT, right, SEBI is very pro. I think so. SEBI wants InvIT to be a successful product. Even Ministry of Finance wants this product to be very successful, right? But I think so when we were doing our InvIT, right, I think so it was something related to the funding part, financing part of it, right, where banks were unable to lend at the InvIT level, right? And there is some clarification note by RBI to some of the banks. And based on that, they formed an opinion that, okay, they can't lend at InvIT, right? So that is the biggest impediment today. So if InvIT has to be successful, if you have got $3 to $4 billion in 2 years, if you have to go $10 or $20 billion, that impediment has to remove, right? So Ministry of Finance, SEBI, developers, all are working together with RBI to ensure that they actually remove that clarification. It's not a regulation. Actually, regulation permits you to take the loan at the InvIT level, but the clarification, right, has actually created a problem. So we are working with RBI to solve that issue, and that still remains the biggest issue, whether it's raising ECB or it is raising a bank loan at the InvIT level, which is very important in terms of delivering the unit return to the investors.
Okay. And are banks the only ones who are not allowed to?
Yeah, so you can do bonds, you can do NBFCs, you can take from there, but I think so the rate of interest, the cost doesn't make sense to take at the InvIT level.
And what about pension funds and other such?
So Indian pension funds, and I think so they are not allowed to invest in InvIT at this point of time, and I think so that is another regulation that needs to change. But I think so from our perspective, it was bank that we were looking for, because they were already existing bankers in our other projects, so but they could not come at the InvIT level.
Okay. And how long was the process, your InvIT process, from the time you started to try to do it to the time that it actually got done?
Interesting question, right? So actually, Reliance and ours came in a gap of 2 months' time, right? But we started earlier than that. So in our case, it took longer time because we had multilateral, bilateral investors spread across the globe, right? So it took more than that, but I think so average tenure should be around a year's or 18 months' time. That it takes time.
That's pretty good compared to what used to happen for the first.
Correct.
For the first InvIT took much longer.
Yeah.
I mean, one failed attempt and then
but
one
I think
attempt.
IIP was a public InvIT, so public InvIT has its own nuances, right?
Right.
We were private, so it's like a private equity kind of participation, right?
Right.
But then you have to just be focused on 5 investors which you have identified and work with them.
Okay. This is not about InvITs, but since you're here, I might as well ask you, what's your current view on BOTs? I mean, you guys have done BOTs, used to be an EPC player.
Correct.
Going forward, are you going to do BOTs or not do BOTs?
So Oriental expertise lies in BOT for sure, right? So we want to keep on doing that. We have a couple of HAM projects also in our kitty, right, which we are executing at this point of time. We are also looking at TOT, but I think so BOT is going to be a part of it. It is going to stay.
Okay. So, and have you looked at TOTs?
So not really, I think so. We are still evaluating that. HAM we have done it, but not really in terms of.
You're leaving that to the big financial international players.